Hello everybody and welcome to another video. So the Lost Shores has come and in some ways gone, I suppose, since the unique event's been done now, but with it has arrived a lot of new lore. In particular, it's not really new lore on the new island that was released, which is what I was sort of expecting, but there has been a lot of new stuff that's kind of arrived in the way of the Fractals, the new mini dungeon, the new kind of gear treadmill endgame stuff that's going on. There's a lot to say about the mechanics of it, and there's a lot to say about agony, and in particular there was a lot of whining before it came out, which, what do you know, now that it's actually there, has subsided, as you could kind of expect, which I do have some thoughts on, and I kind of want to put out there at some point. I've tried many times to film a video of my thoughts on it, but I always find something just off with my commentary each time, but I will put out my thoughts. Generally, I like it, though, I'll say that much, and I've completed about 73 of them now, so I'd say I'm reasonably familiar, but these are actually quite fascinating, the Fractals section of the update, in the amount of just story that they've added, and threads ArenaNet seem to be putting in that might be expanded on later, maybe. I feel a little bit weird saying it because there's already so many threads, it seems a bit weird to speculate about this kind of thing, but I'm pretty sure if you've been in the Fractals, you will have seen some stuff in there that will have made you think, what the hell is the story going on here? I've had a lot of people ask, and I really kind of want to do a lot more lore-sided stuff, so I thought I would talk to you guys about the Fractals of the Mists, and what we can deduce and speculate on from each of the Fractals that are in there. There's currently 9, but there's also a bit of a story about how we're getting in there and what's going on with that, which I'm going to start off with here, and I'm just going to do a couple of episodes on this, maybe a handful each time, and we'll see when we're done with it. So first of all, if you don't know what the Fractals are, if you haven't even played them, they kind of function as a new type of dungeon in the game. Essentially, they're like mini dungeons, and you complete 3 of them at a time, and then you go up a difficulty scale, and it all gets a bit harder. Then you complete another 3, it gets a bit harder, and so on and so on. And it can go infinitely. As you get higher up these scales, new mechanics are introduced, like agony, and also you get a shot at higher gear than was currently in the game before the update came out. So that's mechanically what it's for, and I'm sure a lot of people will be playing. I'm sure some people have got far higher than I have in terms of difficulty. I've completed 73 of them, but I'm only at difficulty 11. So some of the stuff going forward I still haven't seen, like the rings that can drop and so forth, but I have seen each of these 9 Fractals many times now. I've seen all of them that are in there, and each time I seem to notice something new, something cool, something different, and I can put a bit of a spin on it. But despite the fact I've been in so much, honestly, it took me a while to really have a good sit down and speak with some of the NPCs that are up there. The way it works is you've got these different Fractals, 9 Fractals, but you access them from a hub area. This hub is an Asuran lab, believe it or not, an Asura named Dessa. So here's the story. Basically, with the Lost Shores, this was all about an island, a vacation paradise that a group of people called the Consortium, this basically a rival business to the Black Line company that we've now learnt about, were trying to push this new island as a great spot for a vacation. They were going to earn money off of it. Now, what they were trying to do, the Consortium originally, were they were trying to open an Asura gate that went from Lion's Arch to the new island, but a lot of stuff happened with the Karka, which is a bit out of scope of this video. But essentially, instead of opening up a portal to this island, they instead opened one to a random place out in the mists, and they had no idea really where it came from or why it was there, which is curious in itself. But when that happened, the Consortium decided, no, we don't want anything else attacking Lion's Arch. And if you go to Lion's Arch now and you go to the entrance to where you get to this new dungeon, you can see lots of Consortium around there defending it. If you speak to them, particularly one of them, he'll say that they're stopping things from coming out of the portal. They don't want anything else attacking Lion's Arch because it's been happening a bit too much frequently lately, what with the Karka assault and with the events of Halloween 2, which again was kind of things coming out of the mists to attack Lion's Arch. So they're all defending it. The dialogue in one line makes it sound like stuff already has come and attacked them through that portal, and the dialogue in another line suggests that they're just safeguarding against that possibility. I think it's more likely that the truth is it's the latter. We certainly, the players, never saw anything attack out of the new Asura gate to the new dungeon, and when we get inside, of course, we see that it is a lab there belonging to an Asura who themselves doesn't actually mention that anything's managed to escape through the portals. So it seems like they're just safeguarding against the possibility, and aside from that, they're just warning people, look, if you go in there, it might be hard, you might get beaten about, and they talk about adventurers coming back out with bruises and cuts on them, and they warn you not to go in. But of course, we the players go in anyway, because hey, that's how we roll. So the Consortium accidentally somehow open this portal to this mysterious place, and on the inside, you'll meet this Asura there called Dessa. You can speak to her, and she's got a lot of different dialogue options, which even change depending on who you, the character, are in the game, which I'll get back to in a second. But you can speak to her about all kinds of things, and we learn these key things. and basically she's from a crew who are working on the Fractals project. There's a lot of other Asura around there, also belonging to the Fractals project, but they don't actually have any dialogue for us. Of course, there are some golems there who you can merch to. There's a repair anvil and stuff, but she's the only one we can really get any information out. But she's an Asura belonging to this crew called the Fractals project, and in particular, she's dealing with what she's calling the Mist Lock, which she refers to in a lot of different ways, but we still don't really have any concrete information on what the Mist Lock is, except for the fact that it could be a collection of different fractals that come from the mist. So basically, she explains that she has developed a way to pull the mist themselves into reality. So once again, I find myself having to give a description of the mist, which is always so frustrating. I've had to do it a million times on this channel. The mists are kind of like what expands the multiverse in Guild Wars. They're not like the physical universe as we see in real life, but they're a magical expanse that binds and connects everything together, and all creation is born from the mist, which is like this perpetual magical goo that is invisible and it's all around us and it connects everything in all places and all times all at the same time, right? Those are the mists, and we were able to explore them in Guild Wars 1. We certainly were. We could go to the realms of the gods, which existed within the mists. Now, we also heard about characters a long time ago that could learn how to travel through the mists, but this Asura here, she says that she's taken the mists themselves and she's managed to pull them into reality so they can be examined and explored and studied, just like you could study a real area of Tyria. Now, PvP in Guild Wars 2 actually is a very similar story. PvP takes place in the heart of the mists, and from there, all the different PvP arenas you go to, that is the mist replicating, recreating fragments of reality from significant moments of Tyria's history, past, present, and future, presumably. So that's how PvP works, and this is very similar. This is like a PvE version of it. This Asura Dessa is creating these islands of reality that exist within the mist that we can explore. And these islands of reality do represent real things about the history of Tyria. Now, I say Tyria, and I do think it's Tyria. I'll get back to and explain that later, rather than any of the other worlds in the Guild Wars universe. So, although we are exploring these things, it's not the real events. We're not really there when some of these fragments existed while we're in some of these fractals of the mist. While we're not truly there, we can look at them and see that this is an event from some time in Tyria's history. Dessa describes it as Tyria's legacy code. So the stuff we see, we really can speculate on and be like, oh yeah, I know what this is, or more frequently, I have no idea what this is, but it could mean this, 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 and this, which is kind of what these videos are going to be more about. But Dessa herself, she's only a scientist. She can only teleport you from fractal to fractal from these areas of the mist she's pulled into reality. She can only do that much. She needs someone to fight when they get unstable and cause problems for her. And that's what you're doing, basically. You go into these little instances that have got some kind of problem, usually a big boss that you need to kill, to stabilize these fractals of the mists that she's created, and then she's happy and she moves you on. She actually makes it sound like there is a threat to her lab, like the lab becomes unstable if these fractals aren't cleared out, which is why she needs soldiers, which could then mean that at some point enemies have appeared at her lab because it's unstable, right? Or something could have gone wrong with her lab, which could have then meant that those guys out in Lion's Arch, the Consortium, have really seen stuff come out of the portal, and it is a good idea for them to be defending it. Obviously, these are Asura that she's tinkering with the eternal alchemy as she believes in, and she could cause all kinds of crazy stuff to happen. So that's kind of what they've set up, but again, we have no real evidence that anything really did get to the lab or get out through the portal, but that's there's that threat there. There's a risk to the lab unless the player goes to help. You know, it's that sense of urgency that the devs have just kind of thrown in there. While you're around exploring the areas, you hear Dessa actually speak to you. She doesn't often offer much lore, but one fractal in particular, once you go to it, she makes it sound like she's quite disturbed by it and she like runs away to do something. So I think if they keep adding more fractals in, which I do think could be a possibility, ArenaNet could expand on Dessa's story as she slowly has more dialogue, more voiceovers to give you as you run around. And by the way, I really like that. I've always thought since I did Sorrow's Embrace story mode that the game really shines when they're actually giving you the dialogue like that, voiceovers as you're running through, rather than stopping and doing rigid cutscenes. And that's really fun about the fractals, that she's always talking to you, giving you your next goal and so forth, even though quite often she's rather non-specific. But yeah, so Dessa's kind of an important character. You get a lot of dialogue with her straight away at the lab, and as you're going through the fractals, she's got a lot of things to say and to add to the situations. So yeah, I'm really hoping to get to know her after a while. Now, earlier I mentioned that I think these fractals are from Tyria, and that's because when you speak to Dessa, she specifically describes it as the legacy code of Tyria. Now, we're in the mists. In theory, whatever Dessa's doing, in theory, it could mean that these fractals we go to could belong to any space in all of the universe. It could be any of the other worlds which we know do exist. We could go anywhere in the mist. We could do anything there, anywhere away from Tyria. And the things we see in the Fractals of the Mist could be entirely unrelated to any stories we'll ever get for the main Guild Wars 2 game. But she specifically mentions that it's the legacy code of Tyria, so it makes it sound like she, as a character, is most interested in Tyria and learning about Tyria. So from that, I think that there's a very good shot that all these fractals we're going to and all these weird things we're seeing in them actually can be very relevant for future storylines in Guild Wars 2, because I do believe it all takes place on Tyria. Obviously, that's only speculation, but there's a heavy chance it will just be Tyria, and lots of them are very much recognisably from Tyria too. Some of those areas really do look very specific. So that's what I'm kind of going with. I'm hoping to assume most of these events that we're seeing are on Tyria, but it might be fun if they do throw in a curveball every now and then. Some of these are maybe showing us a completely different planet or realm of existence. And the other thing as well is she's calling it the legacy code of Tyria. So we're in the mist again. We could be seeing the future in theory. We could be seeing the present too, but it seems likely to me a lot of the things we're seeing here as well could be in the past. That I don't like that idea so much, honestly. I love the idea that some of these fractals we're seeing are in the future, but bear that in mind. With everything I'm talking about, this could be in the past, the present, or the future, and it could also be on any world or any plane of existence. But to me, I think it's most likely we're looking at the past of Tyria, just because that's what Dessa seems to be interested in, and she's the one creating these fragments from the mist. She's choosing which ones she wants to study, and which ones seem to be coming into being, which we're then going off and exploring. So yeah, just bear all of that in mind. There's a lot of scope here to see some stuff, and indeed we do see some stuff. Lastly, with her, a couple of mysteries they seem to throw out. When you speak to Dessa and say, I'm from Lion's Arch, hey, I'm a volunteer, I'm going to help you out, I'm from Lion's Arch, she says, what do you mean Lion's Arch? I would never set up a portal to Lion's Arch. I don't like that pirate haven. What are you talking about? So that's really weird as well, that for some reason we got in through Lion's Arch, but she doesn't seem to understand that she's created a connection there. So that raises a couple of questions. First, can there be other connections from other areas? Is she messing up the barrier between the mists and reality in some way? That could be interesting, and something we also saw in Guild Wars 1 too with the fluxes to do with Mad King and his freeing of the mists too. So that could be interesting too, that there's this weird connection that she doesn't know about or she didn't plan for that's now opened up. And also it raises the question, well, where is she from? Where did she first enter this area to create this lab within the mists? Now, I think a lot of us kind of assumed, right, well, she's Consortium. She kind of arrived with the Consortium. The Consortium are all defending outside the portal, but it seems she's not actually. She knows about the Consortium. She calls them money-grubbing connivers, though. So she's clearly not in cahoots with them. She doesn't like them at all. And she also talked about how she lost her boyfriend to the Consortium. I think this might have something to do with what we saw in the weekend event. There was something to do with a boyfriend-girlfriend thing to do with Asura, but I believe that's actually two different Asura. That's Bling and Levy that were outside. So I don't actually think she's the same plot. She could be, though. But yeah, so she doesn't like the Consortium at all, and she didn't mean to set up a connection to Lion's Arch. So where's she from? Or, more importantly, maybe, when is she from? We're in the mists. We could be going through any time. We're certainly seeing lots of things from different times. So who's to say she's from our current timeline? What makes this a more interesting question is that, to go back to what I said earlier, if you speak to her as a Sylvari character, just if you're a Sylvari character, she says she has no idea what you are. And you say basically, well, I'm a Sylvari, what are you talking about? Of course you should know what I am. But she says she's never seen a Sylvari before. And she says, well, I haven't left my lab in a long time. But that would mean she'd either been A, stuck in her lab for 25 years, and she doesn't look like she's aged that much. And I guess we could have to assume she didn't go in as soon as she was born, though maybe she's an Asura, maybe she was smart enough to do that. But that either means she's been in her lab for a very long time, or while she's been in her lab, time has condensed somehow and she's experienced very little time in her lab while the real world's moved on very fast, or that she's from the past, which I guess is what that second explanation would kind of explain too. Like, she goes into the lab and now time outside while she's experimenting has started moving really quickly and much time's passed. And of course the Sylvari are very young. Maybe she went in a long time ago from a different place, and now her only connection to reality is many years in the future and from an entirely different location, which is another really, really weird thought. You can't go too extreme with that theory though, because she knows that Lion's Arch is a pirate haven, so that means she's at least from around the time when Lion's Arch was rebuilt after being flooded, and even she knows about the Consortium, who could be quite an old company, quite an old group of people that have perhaps just had a larger influence here on Tyria and aren't that new, but that does kind of mark her to be at least somewhat recent, I suppose. But yeah, that's an interesting line they throw in there. If you're just Sylvari, she has no idea what you are, and why would they throw that in specifically? specifically for Sylvaria. I guess they are hinting maybe that some weird time distortion stuff's going on. So yeah, that's pretty much everything you get from Dessa herself. She will then throw you into these different fractals, and you'll begin to explore the myths in many cool, unique ways. As I say, I'm going to do a couple of videos on this. There's a lot to speculate about. I know you've probably all got the Colossus fractal on the tips of your tongues. Don't worry, I've got quite a few speculations about it, and many of the other ones too. Some of them are quite easy, but have got good stories, even though they're easy, which I'd love to share with you guys. And yeah, I think this is what I've taken most away from this update. Mechanic stuff aside, which I am also enjoying, but mechanic stuff aside, and all this gear treadmill crap everyone's going on about, actually this has been nice. There's lots of stuff to speculate on and think about with the story too, because the story is what I really enjoy. But thanks very much for watching, guys. I will have that next endgame video out soon-ish. I feel like I'm teaching people to suck eggs quite often when I'm recording that one though, so I don't know, I'm trying to put a few twists on it or something interesting in it for when I put it out. So that will be coming though, and thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time. See you.